today we mark Remembrance Sunday as veterans around the world are honored. This year, a little spice was added as a special guest made an appearance at the annual Remembrance Day service. Details straight ahead. In what is turning into a black eye for the Bahamas in the financial industry, the latest in the FTX fiasco today, with the revelation that local police now investigating the collapse of the fourth largest crypto exchange. And Bahamian Sydney Johnson making wave posthumously as he is featured on the Netflix series The Crown. This is our News Weekend Edition. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Megan Shepard. Today is Remembrance Sunday, recognized around the Commonwealth to reflect and remember veterans and service personnel from around the world. Today's service in Nassau saw a very special guest paraded through Bay Street. Our Melina Leonard has the exclusive story.
This year's Remembrance Sunday service had a very special guest, our own Bahamian hero. And thanks to the British Legion Bahamas branch, you'll get to experience that special day with him.
You may remember Comrade Vernon Pinder from an interview we did with him back in September.
My name is Vernon Maxwell Pinder, age 96. I'll be 97 the 5th of next month.
Really?
I've joined the RAF in 1943, and I was demobilized in September of 1945.
And today, the 97-year-old veteran was the guest of honor in the procession from the British Legion Bahamas branch's headquarters on Blue Hill Road to the annual Remembrance Sunday service at Christchurch Cathedral. Led by the Grand Master of Masons, Honourable Leslie Dean of Prince Hall Lodge, the Sir Knights of Centenary Rose Croix, and the Boys Brigade Band, onlookers poured out onto Bay Street to see the man of the hour. Comrade Pinder is now blind, so he couldn't see the amount of people lining the streets to see as the procession went by.
We're on our way to the cathedral. People were lining the streets to look at you in the Jeep, and they were waving and they were taking pictures.
Really?
Yes, there were lots of people on the streets.
Boy, if I could have seen, so I could have hailed the people who were on the street.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad of everything.
You could still feel the love.
Yes, I could feel the love.
The service at Christchurch Cathedral was full of dignitaries, politicians, and service members. Comrade Pinder was seated front and center for the service, surrounded by family and members of the British Legion. When asked why living a life of service is so important in today's age,
community service, I think it keeps you out of trouble mostly. It's good. It keep you out physical. And if you, according to how you are, when you meet people, a lot of people, you get a different feeling. So I think people, loving people, that's the greatest thing.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
Thanks, Marlena. The Royal Bahamas Police Force is now investigating the collapse of the fourth largest crypto exchange, FTX, which moved its headquarters here this year. The latest development comes following the company's bankruptcy filing on Friday, spurred by $6 billion in withdrawal requests in the space of 72 hours. Kendino Knowles, who is following this, tells us why local regulators are on the defense.
In light of the collapse of FTX and its subsequent provisional liquidation, the Royal Bahamas Police Force saying in a statement Sunday that a team of financial investigators from its Financial Crimes Branch are working closely with the Securities Commission to investigate if any criminal misconduct occurred. The latest news comes after FTX representatives said publicly that per Bahamian regulations, the company has begun to facilitate withdrawals of Bahamian funds, saying those funds were among some of the withdrawals processed by FTX recently as it complied with local regulators. But Bahamas Securities Commission seemingly on the defense, saying it has not directed, authorized, or suggested to FTX the prioritization of withdrawals of Bahamian clients. The Commission further noting that such transactions may be void under the country's insolvency regime and consequently result in the clawing back of funds from Bahamian customers. The Commission further defending its position, saying it does not condone preferential treatment of any investor or client of FTX or otherwise.
has the appearance of a bank run in other instances and other forms of economic activity where there is a panic that customers, people who have money or have assets within FTX would not be able to withdraw it. And so they all rush for the withdrawal window at the same time, thereby creating a run on the exchange. Here, there are live questions about the adequacy of the reserves at FTX, and I think that is a source of concern. There have been public reports of both certainly civil and potentially criminal investigations of FTX and its founder.
Capital Peak Strategies founder and principal Alex Zerdine tells us what he believes may have led to the company's collapse.
This means the end of FTX in its current form, and obviously under its current leadership led by Sam Bankman-Fried, who has resigned. However, FTX may be able to reconstitute itself in some other shape or form on the far side of its bankruptcy proceedings. However, that is unlikely.
Asked his opinion on the company's future, Zerdine claiming,
so we've seen the collapse of FTX. We've seen the collapse of Three Arrows Capital hedge fund. We've seen the collapse of Terra and Luna, crypto asset and stable coins. This is not going to be the last bankruptcy, the last insolvency in the crypto ecosystem. Unfortunately, other companies are likely going to be impacted by the collapse of FTX.
And still no word on the status and fate of the company's planned investment of around $60 million to develop a hotel, a commercial center, and a new headquarters at Bayside Executive Park. Reporting for Our News, I'm Candido Knowles.
FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried says he is in the Bahamas. A speculation on Twitter suggested the embattled former CEO had flown to South America following the bankruptcy filing. When asked by Reuters whether he was flown to Argentina, Bankman-Fried responded, "Nope," in a text message, telling Reuters he was in the Bahamas. The opposition also releasing a statement this afternoon calling on the government to break the silence, address this situation. Investigators are tonight probing the death of a young male shot and killed in Chippenham Saturday night. Police say he was one of two on a moped about to visit a shop at the intersection where he was killed. Candido Knowles reports that the victim was recently released from prison and how officers are reinforcing a legacy plea for better conflict resolution.
The recent shooting happening shortly before 9 p.m. Saturday at the intersection of Eden and Foster Streets. Investigators saying they were notified of the incident shortly after one of two males on a moped that pulled up to a business establishment was shot multiple times by another male who exited a light-colored van that pulled up at the same time, the victim succumbing to his injuries on the scene, while police say the assailant escaped in the van heading east. Press Liaison Chief Superintendent Kristen Skippings telling reporters the victim is known to police but did not reveal his age or identity. The other moped rider escaping unharmed and is assisting with the investigation.
Well, it appears as if the suspect knew who his target was.
And while she could not say whether the victim was released on bail, a motive for his killing is also unclear.
Chief Superintendent Skippings mentioned earlier some of the things that we have a challenge with.
Antonio Monroe is Chief Superintendent in charge of the Southern Division and has been in the post for the past 3 months and says based on his experience, the greatest challenge remains conflict resolution. It's why he says area walkabouts have played an important part in the fight against crime.
Sometimes it's a simple resolution where you understanding what it is you need to understand, and they do likewise. But the Southern Division, we try to connect with the people. And we try to do what we can to assist those in these kind of issues.
The latest police statistics showing murders are committed between the hours of 4 p.m. and midnight. This recent killing reinforcing those stats. As for the murder count now into the triple digits.
I don't like to count bodies. These persons, these are people's loved ones. These are family members. One life lost is too many. And we have to, as a country and as a people, try to work with the conflicts and the issues so that we can refrain from losing so many of our young men.
Meanwhile, police are asking anyone with information to please come forward. Reporting for Our News, I'm Candido Knowles.
On the other side of the break, members of parliament say they are confident that the Shantytown issue will be addressed. And one psychologist tells us how important it is to detect signs of trauma in others. That's coming up when Our News Weekend edition returns. Welcome back. The two Abaco members of parliament are confident the Davis administration will address the Shantytown issue on that island. A delegation led by Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper and many government ministers visited the farm Shantytown on Thursday. Central and South Abaco MP John Pinder III says Abaco has the full support of this administration.
The various ministers are doing their utmost to help us in many of the challenges that we have here in Abaco and other places in the Bahamas, but this is one of them. So I always, in every aspect, or every issue, or every problem, or improvement that what we want done in Abaco, it's good to bring the ministers and their technical team so that everybody could see firsthand what we're speaking about, and you'll have a better idea of how to properly progress. But I have full confidence that this administration will do what's right for Abaco.
It was recently revealed that the farm Shantytown grew by an estimated 200 acres since Hurricane Dorian. Both MPs have decried the Shantytown situation on Abaco, with Pinder expressing concern about crime. North Abaco Member of Parliament Kirk Cornish said the visit on Thursday increased his confidence in the Davis administration to address this vexing issue.
The work was being done behind the scene. However, this is just another step in the work. Now they're on the ground, and I'm sure it will build confidence in the residents of Abaco. It shows them that this government is hearing them, and we are answering the call. I am fully confident that this matter will be addressed by this government, by this administration. It will be dealt with humanely, according to laws, and it will not be discriminatory. Any persons found Bahamian or non-Bahamian and violations of the law will be faced with the consequences of the law.
How a cancer diagnosis turned into the birth of a dental practice. Our Christina Dragovich has the touching story.
Dr. Emmanuel Wesley Francis and his wife Andrea sit in the foyer of their Soldier Road dental practice, proudly wearing pink for breast cancer. Their commitment to the cause is clear. You see, Andrea Francis is an 11-year breast cancer survivor whose cancer was caught during routine screening.
They said they found a lump, and they said they want to do an ultrasound. And I said, go right ahead, because I'm a person like this. If you find something, do it and get it over and done with.
Francis says she didn't wait for a second opinion. She got her ultrasound, a biopsy was done, and she got the results in 10 days.
That was scary. That was scary, because you always hear cancer and you hear death. Right. But thank God I had him and our kids. And I must say, with cancer, you need a very good support group.
Armed with that support, she saw a specialist and made a decision.
I said, I want both of them off. And then he said, because of my age and my health, that was impossible. I didn't need it to do that. And so I had the surgery a week later, came back, did my PET scan 6 weeks later, and everything came back. They said it was a stage 1. And then the doctor said, let's check it again, results, make sure. And came back. I didn't need no treatment and nothing like that.
But the experience wasn't without its challenges.
That spirit that was trying to take over her mind, take control of her, to get her into depression, and to agree with where you're going to die and all of that, that's what we had to come against with. And the only way to break through fear is praise.
At the time of Andrea's diagnosis, Dr. Francis was approaching his 30th year as a member of Princess Margaret Hospital's dental staff. Then something happened before her surgery.
Our attending doctor came in, he said, let me hold your hand and pray. I said, I've never seen this. I've never seen a doctor do this. I knew right then that this something, listen, I need to be there for this woman.
The couple believes because they were proactive, they have been blessed with time, and it's not something they're willing to waste. But they recognize the fight against cancer is not the same for everyone. AAA Dental was one of several dental practices offering free screenings for breast cancer fighters and survivors during October. It's a small step and a way for them to pay it forward and bless someone else. Reporting for Our News, I'm Christina Dragovich.
Just after the break, the Netflix series The Crown will never seem the same after highlighting the life of Bahamian Sydney Johnson, who was actually the valet for the Duke of Windsor, and learn how important it is to detect signs of trauma in others. The details right after this break. Welcome back to the Weekend Edition. National Security Minister Wayne Munro says stiffer penalties will be implemented for offenders who breach the terms of bail, particularly those being electronically monitored. Munro says those persons should not be placed back on bail after the violation.
There's a fine now for breaching your bail condition, but committing an offense while on bail is a reason to revoke bail. So if I give you bail on the condition that you wear this monitor so the police can have track of you and you don't comply, and we don't know where you are 24 hours a day, we have a place where we know where you are 24 hours a day. And if you can't comply with the rules for us to know it when you are outside, then we can house you where we know where you are 24 hours a day.
Tropical Storm Nicole is now behind us, but oftentimes events such as hurricanes can trigger past trauma. Clinical psychologist and president of the Bahamas Psychological Association, Wendy Fernander, shares signs you should look out for if you suspect a friend or family member may be suffering during this time.
Depression, anxiety, and negative thoughts. You may also have problems with memory and concentration. Yeah. Lack of interest in activities that you once enjoyed. You may find yourself feeling isolated or detached from loved ones.
Fernando says signs can also include flashbacks, difficulty sleeping, and turning to risky behavior as a form of coping. She suggests talking about what you're feeling and these additional helpful tools.
The brain cannot do two things at once. So focus on your breath. Or use a meditation scripture.
Or meditate.
Right. And try distraction. Reading. Okay. Also try journaling.
She says if the symptoms persist, you should seek professional help. The association president adding that following Hurricane Dorian, several hotlines were established for residents needing additional resources. These lines are still open and available.
Lines in New Providence, that's toll-free, and lines in Abaco. It's important to also mention that these lines are manned by qualified mental health professionals.
The weather is cooling down nicely. The weather report is on the way right after this break. And let's take a look at the life of Bahamian Sydney Johnson, who was the personal valet of the Duke of Windsor. Bet you didn't know that. That's coming up when Our News Weekend Edition returns. Welcome back. Hurricane season is finally winding down. We have a little over 2 weeks left before we can relax a bit weather-wise. Let's take a look at how weather is shaping up over the next week. You've probably been binge watching the Netflix series The Crown recently, but did you know that Sydney Johnson, personal valet to Prince Edward, Duke of Windsor, was a Bahamian born right on the island of Andros in 1923. A YouTube series, Beneath the Crown, takes a deeper look into the life of Sydney. In 1940, at the age of 16, Sydney Johnson was hired as a beach attendant at the Duke's government house here in New Providence. He made such an impression over the years that when the Duke's term ended, he took Johnson along with him to Paris in 1952.
During the 1960s, Sydney was promoted to the prestigious role of the Duke's personal valet.
He knew he was a very handsome man. He knew that, and the world knew that. He was, I think, one of the best-looking person I'd ever seen.
The Duke showed Sydney the ropes on the ways of the British establishment.
Now, there are a dozen writers you have to read if you are ever to understand the English.
Over the years, Johnson and the Duke worked together seamlessly.
The clothes that he wore for the evenings and the lunches, they're all still here, still in this house?
Some of them are here, not all.
Let's have a look and see what you've got there, then.
This was one of his favorite tartan suit that he would wear at the old mill house, the Moulin de la Tuileries. He often used to dress in this.
It's tiny. It's tiny.
It's very, very tiny. He was not a very tall man. All his suit, I will show you, that were numbered. Not the tartan, not the kilts, but all the evenings and the day wear, they had numbers. And he would say, Sydney, number 1, number 2, number 3.
He'd tell you in the morning?
Yes, in the morning. Number 1, number 2, number 3. I know the shirts and everything that will go with these clothes. I know the shoes and I know the socks.
In 1972, the Duke's health sharply declined, and he passed away. Johnson's wife, with whom he shared 4 children, then passed away soon after. To make matters worse, after a falling out about time spent with his children, he was fired that same year by the Duchess of Windsor. Johnson eventually began working at the iconic Ritz Hotel in Paris. There, he met the hotel's owner, Mohammed Al Fayed, who had a strong desire to become a part of British society. He hired Johnson as his personal valet and to teach him the ways of the Windsors, in particular the etiquette of the British. Al Fayed, fascinated with the Windsors, eventually signed a 25-year agreement to lease their former villa. Johnson served as the curator of the restoration.
Sydney is a dictionary, said Mohammed Al Fayed at the time. He's a very cultured man. He got all these things out of boxes and safes and storage rooms, and he knows their history. While the building was full of stunning royal artifacts, the New York Times argued that Sydney Johnson was the utmost important treasure of all.
The reopening of the villa would unfortunately be the last big hoorah for Johnson. Just a little over a month later, Johnson passed away on January 17, 1990, at the age of 69.
So deeply was he valued and trusted by those he served that he transcended the trappings of the traditional master-servant dynamic and forged genuine friendships with the Duke of Windsor and Mohammed Al Fayed. That his hard work saw him promoted to spaces typically reserved for white-only employees could also be seen as progress, especially given his beginnings as a teenage beach attendant in the Bahamas.
A very interesting life story indeed. And just before we go, we would like to wish our technical director, Patty Major, a very happy birthday in advance. Patty celebrates his birthday this Tuesday, and we know it's going to be a good time. Do enjoy, Patty. And thank you so much for joining us for our News Weekend edition. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Megan Shepard. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.